IMG Worlds of Adventure is an odd place. Objectively, this is a world-class indoor theme park and one of the best designed that I've been to. It has so many good rides, a nice variety of attractions, beautiful theming, but something just felt off. And I think it starts first and foremost with popularity. IMG opened its doors in 2016 as a direct result of the Dubai Land mega project. Its developers, Elias and Mustafa Galaderi, aka IMG, came from the city of Arabia with plans to build the world's largest indoor theme park, which they succeeded at doing when it opened. It's since been surpassed by Warner Brothers World in Abu Dhabi, and that record is currently held by Chimelong's Spaceship over in China. But spanning 1,500,000 square feet is nothing short of impressive. And the crazy thing is, this wasn't even the original plans for this park. If you're unfamiliar with the Dubai Land project, this was essentially a dream entertainment city for Dubai. There were going to be 45 mega projects, including multiple theme parks. Dubai Land would be home to Universal, Six Flags, Legoland, a whole Marvel park, a DreamWorks park. And some of those ended up happening, like Legoland, others were abandoned, and then a few of them morphed into other projects, such as the DreamWorks section of Motion Gate or the Marvel section of IMG. The park was designed by Falcon's Creative Group out of Orlando, and there are 6 themed sections: IMG Boulevard, The Haunted Town, IMG Kids Zone, Lost Valley, Cartoon Network, and Marvel. So 4 of those are original themes, 2 of those are branded. And I'll admit, it's a big deal that they got those brand deals in general. I can't think of too many parks that have a Cartoon Network themed area, and Marvel is typically only found at Universal or Disney. So that already gives IMG a lot of credibility. And when you have license deals like that, you can't skimp out. They spent a pretty penny on theming, that's for sure. This is a fully immersive park. There are 18 rides and attractions. This includes 3 roller coasters and 4 or 5 dark rides. And if everything I'm describing sounds great, it's because it should be, and for the most part it is. But I think what kills IMG is their entry price. At a whopping $100 per day ticket, it is a commitment to go to IMG. That's typically prices you only see when you go to like an Orlando or maybe California park. And when there's so much to do in this area, IMG just kind of gets lost in the scene. When it opened, it performed well for like the first 6 months, and then there's just a drop off. And the park never really got its footing. And that's sad to hear because it's tough starting a new theme park. Oftentimes new parks will have a slow start, but then they'll find their footing and build up to be these really popular destinations. And it seems like quite the opposite has been the case for IMG, when objectively it shouldn't be. In theory, this park should perform very well. But even us, theme park fans who traveled across the world to go ride roller coasters, took a look at the pricing for IMG and said, ugh, I don't know, are we sure? What we ended up doing to save some money is we got City Pass, which the option we selected gave us access to 4 attractions in the area, and we paid an upfront fee of about $250 US. And IMG was one of those options, along with some of the parks in Abu Dhabi. And when all of them are about $100 to get in theory that'd be $400, a lot more than the $250 we paid. So it essentially boiled down to us $60 per park, which frankly, I think should be the upfront cost for everyone. That to me is a lot more reasonable for what you get. And considering the fact that when we walked in, it was a total ghost town, you would think that they would reconsider their pricing structure because at this point, I believe it's more important to get people in the gate. You'll help spread the word, and getting 4 people in at $60 a piece is a lot better than getting 1 person in at $100. But because they haven't done that, the end result is walking around a deserted theme park wondering, are we supposed to be here? Looking around and realizing, no, everything's right. Like, yeah, the park is open till 10 tonight. All right. Plenty of employees walking around, but no guests. There were some points when we were quite literally the only ones on the pathway. The longer we were there, the creepier it got. Which is just sad because clearly this place is designed to hold a lot of people. We said it reminded us of when you go to a theme park and you're there for like the last hour of operation and it's like really cleared out, except it's like that the entire day. It felt like we had purchased a park buyout. Like, yes, you have it all to yourself, which sounds great, but there's something kind of off about it. Maybe it's the ratio of employees to guests where you have like 5 employees all staring at you, wondering what you're going to do next. And so as you're walking around, you just feel like you have eyes on you at all times. Because it's like, wow, you're the first guest we've seen in the past like 10 minutes. And it's a weird sense of like pressure. And frankly, if I was an employee there, I feel like it would totally kill my motivation to perform. Because we're watching this awesome parade of Chinese dancers traveling around the park with this awesome dragon puppet, and they're performing for no one. And I know some of you might be thinking, well, maybe you just went on an off day. And from all the research I've done about this park, all the stories and experiences I've heard from others who have been here, no, we went on a pretty normal day. I've heard they'll sometimes get crowds on like holidays, but that's really it. And so it made spending our day at IMG Worlds of Adventure a little interesting. We did our best to enjoy the park for what it is, focus on the attractions and the quality at hand, but then it always circled back to when we stepped foot on the pathway and looked around, and we're the only people there. So all that in mind, I'll go through the different areas of IMG, discuss what they do well, go through the different attractions, and I'll start with that arrival experience because it was very interesting getting here. IMG Worlds of Adventure is right off of a major highway on the outer loop of Dubai. It's a main road, like everyone's going past this park. It's actually located directly next to Global Village, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I'm leaning towards that actually works against IMG because that place is so cheap to get into, and it was packed with people. Very popular park, and no one is at IMG across the street. But you can imagine our surprise when we took the exit for IMG and are following the signs past these like abandoned buildings on this really narrow road, and it felt like we weren't supposed to be there. And I was like, really? This is the road that you have leading to this like world-class theme park? But as you turn the corner for IMG, you'll get your first look at the Velociraptor roller coasters, the only outdoor attraction here. It's a blue fire clone right next to this enormous parking lot that will most definitely not be filled. But I'll admit, the service we got as soon as we stepped foot on the property was amazing. There was someone in a golf cart that drove up next to our car for us to load up in, and then he shuttled us to the main entrance. We didn't even park far away, but we're like, hey, we're not going to turn down a free ride. And we stepped foot into this massive building, and we were greeted with air conditioning. Feels amazing, and in the UAE, that is essential. IMG is open 365 days a year, from noon until typically 10 or 11 p.m. And for a huge chunk of the year, it's just too hot to go outside. That's why you have so many indoor theme parks. So I appreciate that, but the first thing you'll notice when you walk in is how dark it is. IMG Worlds of Adventure is permanently set in night mode, and that severely throws off your sense of time. We rolled up in the morning, and when we left, it was dark out. We realized we had missed the entire day because there are no windows at all to be seen. It's designed to make you feel like you're here in the middle of the night. I think I'd be okay with that for certain areas, but I much prefer how other indoor parks have adapted windows for some sections, like Ferrari World and SeaWorld Abu Dhabi, to at least bring in that natural lighting that really helps. Or at least at a place like Warner Brothers World, they have some night sections, but then you go to like Bedrock and it's permanently set in daytime. I feel like, for instance, the Cartoon Network land would have been better during the day because that's all bright and colorful, right? But because of the way it's set up, the whole park is under one roof. It's essentially this huge dome. It's wildly impressive because there's only a few support columns in the center, and they theme them. So you don't even notice that it's support for the roof unless you look all the way up. It's very clever. It makes places like Nickelodeon Universe at American Dream look sad. In fact, the whole time that I was at IMG, I was wishing that a park like this existed in the United States. Imagine a park themed to this caliber in cities like Seattle or Las Vegas that have very specific weather conditions where an indoor park would do so well. Even Orlando, a destination that has so many theme parks, would benefit from a really cool indoor park. The main entrance for IMG is a forest-like setting with Christmas lights hanging from trees and a ton of animatronic dinosaurs. One of the sections for IMG, Lost Valley, is very prehistoric. Think Jurassic Park, but without the license. So they made that one of the first things you see upon entry. I appreciate just how many dinosaurs they have, but they are very simple movements. Nothing too crazy, so you'll go through your security check. Up ahead will be the ticket booths, and you see that big old IMG sign. And once you're in, you're greeted with IMG Boulevard. Very Chinatown inspired. No rides unless you count this little train going up and down the pathway, which is cute, but it's primarily shops and restaurants. This is one section that I actually think thrives with the night lighting because they can light all the lanterns. And the Christmas lights hanging from above, oh, fantastic. It's actually a great first impression, and it was fun to see a theme park take on this idea because I feel like you don't get too many Chinatown sections in theme parks. Now from here you have some options of where to go. IMG for the most part follows a circular layout, so we'll just take things clockwise. So going to the left, you have IMG Kids Zone. This is easily the smallest section of the park. It's pretty much just a playground for kids. Interestingly enough, this is also their newest expansion. It opened in 2021. To my knowledge, this is the only expansion they've done since park opening, which I think is a little sad, and it's kind of telling about their attendance numbers if in 8 years of operating, all they've they've done is add a little playground for kids. So from there, we'll move on into Cartoon Network. And this was just fun to see. I mean, I'm used to Nickelodeon lands, but not so much Cartoon Network. And they did a great job. I'm not familiar with all of like the shows or properties that they chose for the attractions, but I can acknowledge that everything was well done. We did this Adventure Time ride, which essentially combined a dark ride with an Omni Mover. You hang below the track, passing out over the pathways, going through different theme sections. Really detailed, cute ride. The amazing ride of Gumball is one of the park's dark rides. This one in particular is a shooting ride by ETF Systems. Trackless vehicles, largely screen-based, and a lot of the dark rides in the UAE follow this pattern. They're all built by ETF, and so in that way, many of them feel the same, just with a different show or movie tacked on as the theme. And they all kind of suffer from the same problem, which is that they don't really need to be trackless. Like, it doesn't fully take advantage of that system, at least in my opinion. Like, I enjoyed the Gumball ride for what it is. I think kids will absolutely get a kick out of it. Good ride, not one that I need to do more than once, and there are better dark rides in the park. There's also a Powerpuff Girls air race and a Ben 10 theater. That was actually one attraction that we did not get around to, but it's nice that there are so many different attraction offerings in this one land. Even though IMG has 6 areas, really it's like 3 main themed lands with some smaller ones in between. So Cartoon Network is one of the big areas. Right next to it in the center is one of the small ones. This is Haunted Town. I didn't even realize that this is technically its own area of the park. It's basically just the pathway that surrounds their haunted hotel. It's a walkthrough attraction that opens later in the day. For us, it was about 3 o'clock. And this place may have been dead, but what few people were here were all in line for the haunted hotel. I was impressed with the set pieces. Everything was very detailed, very grand. It just needed more actors. There was only like 4 or 5 in there. But definitely worth doing, and note that you need to be at least 15 to go through, which I thought was interesting. Next up is Lost Valley, probably the largest land in the park, at least in terms of area. They're home to 3 big rides. Predator is a Gerstlauer Eurofighter, their 320 model. Vertical lift hill, beyond vertical drop, there's a vertical loop, a nice helix at the end. It's a solid ride, and it's very dark where it's located, so it felt like a genuine night ride. It had one jolty spot, but the rest of it was pretty smooth. Velociraptor is the Mach Ride's launch coaster that we talked about earlier. I could not believe how big the queue was for this ride. It was insane. You could fit a whole nother ride in this space alone. And it's just sad because you know that it's never going to be filled. We spend all this time walking and we get up to the station. We're some of the only people there. We sit in the train and then we have to wait for them to dispatch until more people show up. They wouldn't even send it until the train was full enough, whatever that meant. And the worst part about it is they don't allow re-rides. They said they don't want people to get dizzy. But the problem is, you spend all this time waiting in between cycles for more guests to show up that you should just be allowed to stay in your seat if there's no one in your row, because you aren't sending the train for another 10 minutes anyways. But instead, you have to go all the way back around, which is just annoying and discourages re-rides. We rode it once, walked all the way back around, and by the time we got back to the station, the exact seats we were in are still empty, and so we just sat back down. It was really pointless. But at least in terms of ride experience, it is a fun coaster. Because it only ran with one train, capacity isn't an issue, so it doesn't slow down at all in the mid-course. The drop-off that felt more extreme, I think it's because this mid-course is a few feet higher than Blue Fire's because it doesn't need to trim. So good ride, just be aware of the awful dispatches. And finally, we have the Forbidden Territory, which was probably the best dark ride in the park. If you're familiar with Dinosaur at Animal Kingdom, this is more or less the same idea. Identical ride system, similar premise, but with a slower pace. Dinosaur is very aggressive and almost too quick to move through the scenes. Here, you take your time. It's very graceful. It doesn't whip or jolt you. But there were some moments that I felt like we should have been moving a bit faster. But it was a nice long ride, well themed. I really enjoyed it. This was one that I did want to do more than once. Besides from those 3 big rides, this land is home to a carousel, and there's an elaborate play structure called Adventure Fortress. It's a well-themed land, but in my opinion, it's way too dark. The whole park is dark, but this section in particular is really dark. It feels like they genuinely don't have enough lighting here. If it's to help set a mood, oh yeah, it's setting a mood all right. I'm annoyed. Install more lights, guys. I can't see. And finally, we have our Marvel Land. And I'm sure some people are wondering how this compares to like Avengers Campus at Disney. But frankly, I think it has way more in common with Marvel Superhero Island at Islands of Adventure. It's set up like an actual New York street, so there are sidewalks, street lamps, traffic lights, and then you have the big Avengers Tower in the skyline, and it is huge. I don't think it's meant to be a realistic New York. It's more of a comic book interpretation of the city because this land is not based off of the movies. Like in all of the rides, the characters don't resemble the actors and they have different voices. So for that reason, it has more personality than Avengers Campus, I'll give it that. There's a Quinjet flat ride. Across from it is a shawarma place. That's actually where we chose to get lunch, and it was pretty good. And then we have our big Avengers dark ride called Battle for Ultron. And this was really cool. I didn't know anything about it going in, and so it was a big surprise for me. It's a really interesting ride system. It was built by Oceaneering. They also did the Forbidden Territory. Another really long, detailed queue. You load up in your ride vehicle, everyone's facing one direction in a row, and then you back up and go through a mix of practical sets and screens. The screens are where all the action takes place. The practical sets are just there as segues. But it was a cool attraction, another long experience, another one of those rides that we ended up doing more than once. Next up is our final roller coaster, Spider-Man Doc Ock's Revenge. This is a mock ride spinning coaster, a clone of Sierra Sidewinder at Knott's Berry Farm or Storm Chaser at Paulton's Park. It has one section that goes out over the pathway, the rest of it is behind a facade. Another well-themed attraction, and depending on how you weight your vehicle, you might spin a ton. Like we personally spun a moderate amount, but one of our friends was off balance and just kept going. That was pretty entertaining. Next up is Thor's Thunder Spin, which is a very impressive top spin where you have Thor and Loki facing off with each other on either side. There's water effects, and it's just a really well done presentation. It's the type of attraction that realistically they could set up seats in front of it and people would just sit there and watch it. It's a spectacle. I like to call it Marvel Talican. And then finally, we get to my favorite ride in the park, Hulk Epsilon Base 3D. This is a one-of-a-kind motion stage from Dynamic Attractions. And while it is a ride, they treat it more like a show. It's not just continuously operating, there are set show times. So as a result, we only got to do it once, unfortunately, but I was just blown away at the ride system. The whole platform moves on a gyro and you'll spin around, shifting with the media. The whole attraction is story-driven and there's just so much happening at once. And no matter where you sit, there's something to look at. SeaWorld Abu Dhabi has a similar sort of attraction by Intamin called Hypersphere. That's like a more modern, upgraded take on this one. Do not miss this when you come to IMG. It was really cool. And then that brings us back onto IMG Boulevard. That completes your loop. This is a big park. It feels like a full-sized outdoor park, but under a roof. Like, prepare to do a lot of walking. And I think one of the things that impresses me most about it is that they maintain that immersive atmosphere. You can't see any of the rides from the pathways, unless it is meant to be seen from the pathway. Most major attractions are perfectly hidden behind a facade. You don't know what you're walking up to until you're on the ride, and you can't see the other lands from whatever land you're currently in. And for the most part, they also take good advantage of lighting. Like certain rides or buildings will be lit up to look photogenic, and then if there's something they don't really want you to see, they'll keep it hidden in the darkness to help with the immersion. So that's why when I say design-wise, this is a really smart park. Objectively, everything is done really well. But again, we just felt off being there, which is sad because we're trying to have a good day, but there's this underlying feeling of, wow, this place probably isn't doing so well. And so that was a common topic of conversation as we're going around our day. The next time we're in Dubai, is this place even going to be open still? Frankly, of all of the parks out here, if I had to guess which one would close first, it'd be this one. But it's also because there's tough competition. The Abu Dhabi parks are all so good. This was our first big theme park that we went to in the Middle East, and it was a great introduction, but I ended up liking all of the others better than IMG. And I think there's a few factors to that. Yes, I think that all of the other parks are just done better, but also there weren't a ton of rides here that even though we had the park to ourselves, that I found myself inclined to go again. Many of the rides here are a one and done. And so for that reason, if I was back in the UAE, would I go back to IMG? Well, I don't know. My gut says probably not. I was very content with the experience that I had, and none of the rides here blew me away to the point where I'd dying to go back. And the same cannot be said about some of the other parks in the Emirates that I'm actually excited and want badly to go back to. So if you find yourself out in Dubai, do I recommend IMG? I do, as long as you feel that high admission price is going to be worth it. Because there really are no bad rides here, and if you have the park to yourself, it means you'll have no issue getting on everything. But if you're limited on time or funds, I would be sooner to recommend visiting one of the other parks instead. So, just something to think about, but let me know down in the comments below if you've been to IMG Worlds of Adventure. If you agree with the points that I brought up, if you think there's anything I missed, be sure to let me know. And if you're new to the channel, please go check out the Park Reviews playlist. There are reviews in there from places all across the world. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.